At 57, Keith Urban has finally opened up about the real story behind his marriage to Nicole Kidman, and it's nothing like fans imagined. After years of speculation, private struggles, and public assumptions, he breaks his silence, revealing the challenges, the love, and the secrets that shape their union. From moments of tension to enduring devotion, Keith's confession is raw, heartfelt, and eye-opening, offering a glimpse behind the glamorous facade that few have ever seen. This is the truth fans have been waiting for. Keith Urban's story begins in the windswept corners of New Zealand, a boy who clutched a guitar not as a toy, but as armor. His childhood was anything but easy. At 9, a fire consumed his family home, turning familiar rooms into smoke and ash. Toys melted, photographs curled, and the warmth of a safe home vanished in a single night. Keith's father, Robert, was a man of extremes, loved music, yet ruled with unpredictability and anger. Affection was rare, words of love almost non-existent. In that house, silence felt heavier than fists, and every door slam echoed like thunder. Amid this chaos, the guitar became his refuge. When Bob placed a handwritten sign in his shop seeking a guitar teacher, it led Keith to Sue McCarthy, the first person to see the boy beyond his fear. By the time he was 6, holding a guitar, Keith had found a voice in music, a lifeline to survive a world that often seemed hostile. Meanwhile, Nicole Kidman's childhood unfolded under a different kind of pressure. Born in Honolulu, but raised in Sydney, she grew up in a home of intellect and care, yet carried a storm of her own. A stutter made speaking terrifying, and she often felt invisible in a family of bright minds. Ballet and theater became her sanctuary, places where movement and expression could speak what words could not. From an early age, she learned that silence could be both a prison and a shield. Being different brought mockery from peers, yet she turned alienation into empathy and strength. Her parents recognized her gift, nurturing her talent even as the world challenged her. Both Keith and Nicole were shaped by adversity in unique ways. Keith learned to survive through sound, turning chaos into rhythm. Nicole learned to thrive through performance, transforming silence into power. Their early lives were marked by trials that could have broken them, yet instead forged resilience, the scars, the fear, the quiet moments of despair. They became the foundation upon which they would build not just careers, but a capacity for empathy, courage, and endurance that would later define who they were as artists and as people. In the end, their childhoods were not simply stories of hardship. They were lessons in survival, shaping hearts capable of love, creativity, and connection. The fires Keith faced, the silences Nicole endured, both instilled in them a relentless determination to be seen, to be heard, and to transform pain into purpose. These origins of resilience would follow them into adulthood, guiding every choice, every note, every role they would take, laying the groundwork for the extraordinary lives they were about to lead. Keith Urban's journey from a boy in New Zealand clutching a guitar to a global country music icon was never smooth, and it was never meant to be. Every chord he played carried the echoes of a childhood shaped by fire and fear. Every lyric he sang was a testament to survival. The devastation of losing his home at 9, the absence of his father's love, the constant threat of chaos at home. They were not just obstacles, they were the soil in which his talent took root. Music became more than a passion. It became oxygen, a way to exist in a world that often felt like it wanted to crush him. By the time he was a teenager, Keith's skill on the guitar was undeniable, but so was the weight of the scars he carried. He played smoky pubs and small fairs, not for fame, but because playing kept him alive, gave him purpose, and made the emptiness inside him bearable. Every performance was both therapy and defiance, a quiet rebellion against the belief that he would never amount to anything. Keith's ascent was neither fast nor easy. Rejection was a constant companion. Doors slammed in his face repeatedly as he sought a place in the competitive Nashville music scene. Bands dissolved, opportunities vanished, and the ache of isolation pressed down like a second skin. But each setback only honed his determination. In 1990, he released his debut record under EMI, a modest beginning that barely scratched the surface of the American market. To most, it might have seemed enough, but for Keith, it was simply the first step on a path he was determined to carve with his own hands. He moved to Nashville in 1992, leaving behind the remnants of his childhood, his family, and every safety net. Alone in a new city, facing the brutal reality of anonymity and failure, he played every gig he could find, sold songs to other artists, and endured nights where the applause was barely audible over the laughter and indifference of strangers. These were the years that forged not just a musician, but a survivor, someone who understood that talent alone could not guarantee success. Only relentless persistence and resilience could. Nicole Kidman's path, though different, was equally shaped by struggle and perseverance. Born in Hawaii but raised in Sydney, she grew up navigating a world that often made her feel invisible. Her stutter isolated her, and even in a family that nurtured intellect and creativity, she often felt like she didn't belong. Ballet and theater became her refuge, allowing her to express what words could not capture, to claim a voice when silence threatened to consume her. By her early teens, she was already stepping into the professional world of acting, leaving traditional school behind to pursue the craft that offered both sanctuary and identity. Early roles in Australian television and film honed her skill, but it was the bravery to embrace complex, challenging characters that would define her career. Each role she took on, from tense thrillers to profound dramas, became a way to transmute personal vulnerability into extraordinary artistry. She learned that power could emerge from fragility, that empathy could be a weapon, and that silence, once a cage, could be transformed into voice and influence. When Keith and Nicole met, their lives had already been shaped by trials few could imagine. Keith had survived fire, abuse, and relentless rejection to claim a place on stages he once thought unreachable. Nicole had turned silence, grief, and isolation into a career that demanded attention and reverence. Together, they were two survivors who understood pain not as a deterrent, but as a catalyst. Keith's music began to resonate not just because of technical skill, but because it carried the authenticity of struggle. His hits, from "But for the Grace of God" to "Somebody Like You," were infused with the rawness of lived experience. Each chart-topping album, Grammy Award, and sold-out stadium show was a celebration not just of talent, but of resilience, proof that adversity could be transformed into triumph. Nicole's rise was similarly defined by grit and choice. She didn't chase safety or comfort. She sought roles that challenged her, that demanded she bleed emotion onto the screen. From early Australian films to her breakout in Hollywood, every performance was a claim of existence, a testament to a woman who had been silenced yet refused to vanish. The Oscars, Golden Globes, and critical acclaim were milestones, but more importantly, they were markers of endurance. A recognition that she had turned personal struggle into profound art. Each project she chose reflected a willingness to confront fear, to inhabit discomfort, and to find truth in vulnerability. Their individual successes were impressive, but together, Keith and Nicole became a power duo defined by empathy, support, and shared understanding of what it meant to rise from struggle. In their marriage, in their careers, they balanced brilliance with humanity, fame with fragility. Keith's songwriting captured the ache and beauty of survival, while Nicole's performances mirrored the depth and complexity of a life shaped by adversity. Both transformed early hardship into the fuel for extraordinary achievement, proving that triumph was never about escaping struggle, but about forging strength from it. The story of their careers is a lesson in resilience. Keith's stadiums and Nicole's red carpets were not just symbols of fame, they were monuments to endurance, proof that the most enduring success often emerges from the harshest beginnings. Every note, every line, every award they won was inseparable from the trials that shaped them. Triumph, for Keith and Nicole, was never accidental. It was earned painstakingly, from pain to perseverance, from silence to voice, from ashes to art. Their lives remind us that struggle is not the enemy of greatness. It is often the very forge in which greatness is crafted. Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's story was never the kind of love that arrived quietly. It was the kind that entered the lives of two people already scarred by their own battles, carrying with it the weight of past heartbreaks, personal demons, and the long, lonely nights that only survivors of hardship truly understand. When they met in January 2006, it wasn't fireworks or a cinematic romance. It was a quiet recognition, a mutual understanding that each had been through storms that left them wary, cautious, and yet hungry for connection. Keith, with his haunted past, had felt the sting of rejection, the burn of addiction, and the emptiness of fame that couldn't soothe the ghosts of his childhood. Nicole, shaped by silence, grief, and personal loss, had endured heartbreak and the painful experience of feeling erased in her own life. In each other, they found not perfection, but the rare possibility of safety, empathy, and acceptance. From the very beginning, their love was intertwined with trial. Keith's struggles with alcohol and the shadows of addiction did not disappear when he met Nicole. He had fought for decades to find stability, and old habits sometimes threatened to pull him back into darkness. Nicole, who had witnessed firsthand the fragility of love and the ache of loss, refused to abandon him, not out of duty, but out of a deep-seated understanding that love could be transformative when paired with patience and courage. Together, they became a team in the truest sense, partners who carried each other's broken pieces, holding space for grief, fear, and the weight of fame that pressed on them from all sides. Nicole staged interventions, gathered friends and doctors, and offered unwavering support, demonstrating a love that was not passive but fiercely active, refusing to allow the past to dictate the future. In the years that followed, their love faced challenges both ordinary and extraordinary. Keith's career demanded constant travel, nights in arenas filled with thousands, and relentless public scrutiny. Nicole's own work required immersion into roles that demanded her heart and soul, sometimes leaving her physically and emotionally drained. Yet within the chaos, they found rituals of normalcy and connection, cooking breakfast together, playing with their children, long walks away from cameras and crowds. Their home became a sanctuary where they could be themselves, away from the relentless glare of public expectation. These moments, though small and often overlooked by outsiders, were acts of resistance against the forces that threatened to erode their bond. The couple also faced profound fears of their own creation, brought on by the very fragility that made them human. Nicole, who had endured miscarriages and the pain of being estranged from her first children, approached motherhood with reverence and anxiety. When she held her newborn daughter Sunday Rose, and later Faith Margaret, through surrogacy, she embraced the miracle but also wrestled with the terror of failure. Keith, who had once clutched a guitar as armor, now clutched his role as a father with the same intensity, striving to be present, attentive, and loving in ways that contrasted the absence of care in his own youth. Their shared parenting became an extension of their love, a tangible manifestation of their commitment to transform past trauma into a safe, nurturing environment for the next generation. Yet love alone did not erase the past. Healing was neither instantaneous nor linear. They encountered relapses, moments of fear, and the lingering echoes of grief. Keith's ghosts from addiction, Nicole's pain from prior losses. At times, their careers pulled them in different directions, forcing them to navigate long periods of absence and separation. In these moments, their bond was tested, not by scandal or betrayal, but by the raw difficulty of living fully while carrying wounds that did not heal overnight. Their commitment required courage, patience, and a willingness to meet one another in vulnerability. They had to learn that love was not a shield against pain, but a space in which pain could be shared, softened, and transformed. Their public life amplified these trials. Every decision, every appearance, every red carpet was scrutinized, forcing them to navigate the delicate balance between personal intimacy and public persona. The glare of fame was relentless, and the pressure to appear perfect was constant. Yet they persisted, choosing to reveal only what they were ready to share, protecting their family while still embracing authenticity in their art and music. Keith's lyrics often reflected his journey with addiction, redemption, and love, while Nicole's performances revealed the quiet resilience born from years of personal struggle. Together, they created a shared narrative in which their art and their life echoed each other, a dialogue between music, performance, and the lived experience of healing. Through nearly 2 decades together, Keith and Nicole's love was a testament to endurance. It was not flawless or easy, but it was persistent. They faced fires that might have destroyed lesser bonds, and chose repeatedly to meet each other with compassion and patience. They transformed pain into poetry, grief into empathy, and vulnerability into strength. Their home, filled with laughter, music, and the small rhythms of daily life, became a refuge not only from the pressures of their careers, but from the lingering shadows of past trauma. In each other, they found both mirror and anchor, reflecting the scars they carried while providing the stability to endure them. The ultimate measure of their love was not in grand gestures or public displays, but in the quiet acts of choosing each other daily, in moments of forgiveness, in standing together when the world seemed unkind or unfair. Their marriage, though eventually fractured, was not defined by its end, but by the magnitude of what they survived and built together. Keith and Nicole exemplified a love that acknowledged pain rather than denying it, that nurtured growth rather than perfection, and that understood that shared healing requires patience, courage, and unwavering presence. In a world that often celebrates fleeting romance and instant gratification, their story was a rare testament to endurance, demonstrating that love, when combined with understanding and empathy, can turn shared trials into a profound, life-altering journey of healing. Their journey illustrates that the deepest connections are often forged in fire. Every obstacle, every relapse, every loss became a crucible in which their bond was tested and refined. The love they built was inseparable from their trials, and the healing they achieved was inseparable from the challenges they faced. Together, they created not a fairy tale, but a lived reality in which vulnerability, struggle, and resilience intertwined to form a partnership that was as inspiring as it was human. Keith and Nicole's story reminds us that love is not about perfection, but about choosing each other in the face of adversity, and that true healing is never solitary. It is shared, nurtured, and defended with patience, courage, and unwavering devotion. The story of Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman is one of love forged in fire, but even the strongest flames can burn themselves out. For nearly 2 decades, their marriage had been a sanctuary of mutual understanding, resilience, and shared healing. Yet life's relentless pressures eventually began to weigh too heavily. The news of their separation in 2025 didn't arrive with the explosive drama of a scandal or tabloid frenzy. It arrived quietly, with the weight of inevitability that comes from 2 people who had given everything they could, yet found that love alone could not erase the fractures life had placed in their path. For fans, the announcement was jarring. For Keith and Nicole, it was the recognition that sometimes, even when 2 people survive storms together, survival doesn't always mean staying together. The years leading up to the separation had been a mixture of triumphs and trials. Keith had achieved global recognition, with albums topping charts, awards stacking on shelves, and stadiums echoing with the voices of thousands of fans. Nicole had continued to command Hollywood stages and screens, transforming personal pain into performances so raw that audiences could feel the vulnerability behind the glamour. Together, they had navigated illness, loss, and public scrutiny, carving out a life that blended celebrity and ordinary family moments in a delicate balance. Yet beneath the surface, the quiet pressures accumulated. Relocation, touring schedules, career demands, and personal grief all chipped away at the once unshakable bond. Love had been their anchor, but it could not always shield them from the wear of life lived in extremes. When the separation became public, it was a sober affair of legal filings and private arrangements. Nicole quietly filed for divorce in Tennessee on September 30, 2025, citing irreconcilable differences. The proceedings, though formal and public in a legal sense, were marked by a mutual desire for dignity. Custody arrangements were established, ensuring that Sunday Rose and Faith Margaret would remain primarily with Nicole while Keith would have carefully structured visitation. Property and finances, mansions, penthouses, estates, cars, and other assets were itemized and divided, their combined fortune exceeding $325 million, 0 cents. Yet for both Keith and Nicole, the numbers, though immense, were meaningless in comparison to the emotional cost. The true loss was not material, it was the quiet life they had built, the shared mornings of laughter, music, and family rituals that now existed only in memory. Reflection became an unavoidable part of the separation. Both Keith and Nicole were forced to reckon with what their marriage had meant, what it had given them, and what it had asked in return. For Keith, it was a period of reckoning with his own vulnerabilities, recognizing how his past struggles with addiction and insecurity had impacted not just himself, but the relationship he had fought so hard to sustain. For Nicole, reflection involved acknowledging the sacrifices she had made, the personal grief she had endured silently, and the strength it had taken to nurture both her children and a partner who had once been lost to his own demons. The separation was less a failure and more a moment of honesty, a recognition that love, however profound, cannot always overcome life's unyielding pressures. Even as they stepped away from marriage, both sought to preserve their shared legacy. Their daughters remained central to this effort, the living proof of a love that, while no longer romantic, had been deeply committed. Both Keith and Nicole were careful to prioritize family over ego, ensuring that their children would not bear the brunt of adult decisions. In interviews and statements, they emphasized respect and shared devotion, framing the separation as a passage in life rather than a rupture of character. For fans, this transparency was a rare glimpse into how 2 public figures could navigate heartbreak with grace, showing that dignity is not dependent on the permanence of a relationship, but on the integrity with which one handles its end. The separation also prompted a period of introspection about legacy. Keith's music, built on survival, resilience, and vulnerability, continued to resonate with millions, but he now had to reconcile the personal cost behind those melodies. Nicole's film and television work, long lauded for its emotional depth and transformative power, carried a renewed layer of authenticity. An understanding that life itself could provide performances no actor could invent. Together, their time as a couple had created a shared narrative of endurance, one that extended beyond awards and accolades. It was a legacy of navigating human complexity, of showing that even amidst triumph and fame, struggles remain, and choosing to face them with honesty and care is itself a triumph. As the dust settled, both Keith and Nicole began to rebuild individually, carrying forward lessons learned from shared life. Keith focused on music and personal healing, channeling the emotional truths of his past and present into songs that spoke to both vulnerability and strength. Nicole continued her career with a heightened awareness of the fragility and resilience of life, embodying stories that reflected the depths of human experience she had lived firsthand. Their shared history became a foundation rather than a burden, a reference point for understanding love, endurance, and the complex reality of human relationships. Ultimately, the separation of Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman illustrates that love is not measured solely by its duration, but by its intensity, honesty, and transformative power. They built something extraordinary together, endured storms that would have broken many, and emerged with a legacy rooted not in permanence, but in courage, empathy, and shared humanity. Their story is a reminder that even when relationships end, the lessons, memories, and impacts endure. What remains is not just what was lost, but the depth of what was created, the love that shaped them, the family they raised, and the inspiration they provided to countless others. In reflection, the quiet ache of separation carries with it a profound acknowledgement that even when love cannot last forever, it can still illuminate lives, leave indelible marks, and remind us that resilience, grace, and shared experience are the truest measures of human connection. Keith and Nicole's journey now stands as a testament to the fact that endings, while painful, can be dignified. That separation does not erase history, and that love, even when transformed, continues to guide, inspire, and shape lives in ways far beyond the visible horizon. Their story, with all its highs, lows, and quiet reckonings, will remain a blueprint of endurance, teaching that reflection, respect, and legacy endure long after the heartache fades.